What's up, guys? So, seasonal patch for spring is on the horizon, as you know, and not only is Super Adventure Box going away, but this is going to be the conclusion of Season 2 over in the PvP Leagues world. Some of you guys might not have been playing this yet. I participated in both Season 1 and Season 2. I want to talk to you guys about how it changed and my personal experience going through it, because I ended up participating a hell of a lot more. There is a video out there, a few months old now, just as Season 1 was ending, where I said to you guys, look, I don't think I'm a competitive player. I don't have the time to put into a proper 5-man pre-made team, and I don't like the RNG associated with solo queuing. I especially don't like when I'm in a 5-man environment, the kind of arsehole that I basically become when I become hyper-competitive and, you know, egos clash. So I kind of said to you guys, look, I don't think I'm much of a competitive player. I don't think these seasons are too much for me. What I'd like ArenaNet to do is actually look a little bit more at their unranked and incentivize some more wildness to the format and more build diversity and just make it feel generally a bit more rewarding. Something ArenaNet themselves, by the way, have never said they really care to do. Now, contrary to everything I said a couple of months ago, I did play this season, and I actually climbed to the height of this season. I became a legendary player. A lot of this was documented on the streams. You can see a lot of my progression. In fact, the main build I played the whole way through all of this, I was a complete noob with when I very first started, and I actually streamed my very first experiences with it, and I basically played it the whole way through. And that is also contrary to what I said to you guys before at the end of Season 1, where I explained that I think to do quite well in these seasons, you need to learn a lot of different classes so that you can hot swap your build on the fly based on the enemy's comp when you're like in that solo queue environment. Make sure you're always playing the thing that your team that was ad hoc created by the matchmaking system most needs. So let's talk about this. I ended up at Legendary. Originally that wasn't my plan. What I wanted to do was just play a little bit of PvP, use it to get my dailies, slowly progress towards the Legendary back piece, which actually costs 3 ranked games a day. This was something I didn't really appreciate in the previous season, by the way. And just to see where I ended up, I had a vague idea that I might be somewhere around Ruby, but after hitting Ruby, I kept going, obviously, because I wanted my Legendary back piece, and suddenly I found myself on the cusp of Legendary, with no real effort having gone in there at all. This was entirely motivated by me just doing 3 games a day, not really caring very much, playing the same character, and it just so happened that every day when I logged in and I played my 3 games, I tended to win the majority of those games. Very quickly, I'd win-streaked my way all the way out of the Ruby division, all the way out of Diamond, and then basically onto the cusp of Legendary. So, how did this happen? This is because of the matchmaking changes that they made. There's no more like obscure double pip rewards or double pip losses and things like this. There is simply, if you get on a good win spree, you get bonus pips, and if you lose enough games in a row, they'll give you like a compensation pip, a pity pip, love the name of that, to sort of give you that encouragement and that incentive to keep trying and eventually manage to get your win again. And just because of this system favoring those who play a lot, eventually you are going to get to Legendary. See, mathematically, the way this kind of works out now is, if you have a 50% win rate in the current matchmaking system, if you play enough games, just due to the fact that through RNG, sometimes your wins are going to come bundled in together, thus giving you bonus pips, you are gradually going to climb your way up the divisions. As you climb, though, it does then start matchmaking you against other people who have climbed that high, and in theory, it should get harder until eventually you finally leveled out. But I just found that didn't really happen to me. When I eventually leveled out, it was for a completely different reason, which I'll get to in just a second. So I do think there's a lot of strength to that daily system, by the way. It was not my goal to play very much PvP at all, but because of the way ArenaNet designed getting this Legendary back piece, because they gated it daily and made it so that people played a reasonable amount of ranked games, just under an hour of PvP every day, they've kept the population in PvP very high the whole way through the season, and they have actually born some players now, like me, who had no intention to play very much at all. And speaking of the matchmaking, just to talk about the times for a second, it's remained quick across the board. I'm kind of a bit of a wild person in that sometimes I'll be playing very early in the morning and sometimes I'll be playing very late at night, sometimes in the middle of the afternoon. Doesn't matter whether I've been playing on NA or EU, which I can freely transfer around, by the way. I have never really had super slow matchmaking. I think my longest matchmake was maybe 5 minutes tops, and that was as I only just got into Legendary, where maybe a lot of people hadn't progressed that high up. So I do want to talk a bit about this thing where I got to Legendary, because honestly, I do not believe I am that good of a PvPer. I will happily say that about myself. I think there are several tiers of higher skill level that I could hit, both in terms of the way I play with my teams, my understanding of the current meta, my movement, my rotations, my particulars about the way I can focus and how much attention I can pay in battles. There's a lot I could do to improve, and yet here I am, and I think there's a bit of a mistake there. I think that's a bit of a problem. I do think, for what it's worth, a lot of this is just me getting carried by a very overpowered, ridiculous Mesmer build that I played enough to, get reasonably good with. But I do think there's a problem here. I think the fact that everyone generally is getting so many more pips this season has undervalued Legendary. By comparison, when I got to this last division, when it became a matter of earning prestige for me, I felt like I'd put in the same amount of effort this season as when I'd hit maybe mid-Sapphire in Season 1. There was a huge difference, and because so many players are getting so many more pips this season, the quality of players in the higher divisions is definitely a lot lower. I was getting slapped about by much more deadly opponents in Ruby in Season 1, it felt, than I was by even a lot of Diamond players or current Legendary players in this season. I feel like there's a lot less value there. I don't know how people feel about this. We had some good discussions on the stream, especially when I immediately got it, because it felt weird to me. A lot of people were throwing their opinions into the ring because there is kind of this weird thing where PvPing in the seasons doesn't feel very rewarding unless you're going up through the divisions. But it's not supposed to be a rewards track. It's supposed to be something that levels out your matchmaking. So how do we feel, guys? I'm throwing this to you all. Where do you think this should be? Do you think a player like me should be ending up getting all the way up to Legendary? Because I personally feel like I should be leveling out somewhere around early Ruby, as I did last season, or even, maybe that's pushing it, maybe like late mid-Sapphire. I feel like I should be hitting somewhere around there. And obviously, as the season goes along, there's even more time, even more opportunity for even weaker players to have climbed higher up through the divisions. And so then the general bar of quality seems to feel even lower. And it's not just me. I do feel like you see a lot of Legendary players, if you guys haven't been paying attention to little badges, if they've just blended into the background for you now next to everyone's nameplates, as they certainly have for me. At any moment in time, I can look around in the Heart of the Mist. I see several Legendary players around me, far more it feels than in the previous season. And is this just because it's easier? Or maybe it's to the season itself's credit. It's a better, more interesting meta we've been playing. I'll talk about that in just a second. Or maybe, just because the matchmaking's better, more people are around, so people are obviously more likely to get to the end. I'm curious to see what you guys feel, because I feel kind of unrewarded and kind of like it didn't mean very much this season to get there. Maybe that's just me, though. Alright, so let's talk about the build I was playing just for a little bit. Again, a couple of months ago, I told you guys I was going to multi-class a lot if I was ever really going to try again. I ended up not doing that. I played a little bit of Necro at the start, but I quite quickly resolved, look, Necro was okay last season. Necro is definitely way stronger in this season. They got a lot of buffs, which meant there were tons of Necros around, so it was a viable choice for me, but I kind of wanted to try something else. So I went with Mesmer. I basically just grabbed a build off of someone else's stream, very wantonly, didn't do any real looking into it at all, just played this preset build for a bit, started learning about it, tried to make my own tweaks to the build, then realized I preferred the way that the build originally was, and then I literally took this exact idea of a Condi Mesmer and played it the entire way through the season. Now, I do think there's a lot of prestige around Mesmer that doesn't deserve to be there. I don't think that Mesmer is particularly much harder of a class than any other class out there. I still struggle way more personally playing as a thief, for example, than I do with this Mesmer, especially this implementation of a Mesmer build. It just had so much quality of life, heaps of opportunity, heaps of skills available at all opportunities to Condi cleanse or heal myself or provide some kind of damage mitigation to move very quickly, that it made it a really comfortable build quite quickly after I rolled into it. I don't think it was very hard to play, and the very cool thing about this Mesmer build was it had so many abilities that allowed you to carry. Okay, like, I don't think it takes a genius to carry on a Mesmer, but as soon as you get used to, the way that you're using your portal, or the way that you're perhaps going to use your Moamorph every time in your continuum split to get much value out of it throughout the entire game, or maybe you'll just double up to win a really key team fight, say you're desperate for the mid node on Legacy of the Foefire. In these situations, when you learn these little things, suddenly it becomes very easy to take a lot of stress out of the game. And I think that's what contributed to me to getting so many comfortable wins without really even paying much attention to it. Definitely a fun build, definitely an overpowered build that I'm expecting to be tweaked in Season 3. I do think that if I wasn't playing this Mesmer, I would be flagging serious problems with it. I'd be pretty angry about it. It felt to me like pretty much any 1v1 I wanted, I could win if I played very well. There are only a few matchups for this Mesmer build that I often struggled with in 1v1s, and even then it always felt like there was a window of opportunity for me once I'd lost the 1v1 that maybe I could have ended up winning in the end. So I do think that this will be changed. I do think that my speeding through of this PvP season had a lot to do with that build, but I also think that the season in general was a little bit easier. So, speaking of speeding through the seasons, there is kind of an interesting psychological thing that I noticed. I'm curious if you guys had this same experience. It was quite curious to me. I would say the least amount of fun I had the entire time through the season was late diamond. And why was it late diamond? Well, maybe you guys can guess straight away. It's because in late diamond, everybody is in try-hard mode. You know, I'd originally only intended to go for early ruby, but once I got to late diamond, just because of my dailies, you're damn right, I suddenly wanted legend, right? I wanted to go for that final division, and this is where you want to win the most. And this was quite interesting. Obviously, in any set meta for any season we have, there's going to be the status quo, the best builds out there, the ones that people feel like are the safest. And this becomes really boring in late diamond because everybody wants to play those builds. So, for example, I've talked about this Mesmer build being very strong. Late diamond, it was not uncommon for me to find 3 people on that Mesmer build on my team all at the same time. In fact, on one of the streams I ran, we ended up losing a game, I believe my last game to getting legendary. I believe we lost because 3 people on my team all loaded in on this exact same build, the same one I was playing, and everybody refused to swap to another class. Now, in my own credit, I'll hold my hand up. I did try to swap to another class. It's just that I didn't have anything properly geared up at the time, and then I ended up having to swap back. But a lot of people get a big tunnel vision. They don't think about the comp in whole, and they just want to run that one build that they feel like they're best at. And this leads to very stagnant games and very boring games where there's really not much build diversity going on. Yes, that Mesmer example came up, but the biggest problem for this for me this season was Necromancer. Necromancer, I've already alluded to, was a very strong class this season. It was not uncommon, okay? You're in a 5v5 environment in Conquest, and it was not uncommon for 6 of those 10 players to be on Necromancers. 3 per team. That happened so many times for me, and specifically in late diamond, where people are like, oh, this is the overpowered class. This is the one that I want to run. That was not uncommon. You saw a lot of very sustainy Ellies. They were around a lot of the time. And in this specific area, in this try-harding area, the game got kind of boring, right? Like, and I was definitely a party to this. I was running that same Mesmer build because I felt that I desperately wanted to get up the division as best I could, and I knew this was the best build that I could be playing, and I knew how it worked the best at that time. But it is a bit of a shame that we don't see more build diversity. But maybe that problem's not too crazy, because as soon as you get out of that late diamond stage, where everybody cares so much, all of a sudden, everybody gets to breathe a sigh of relief. And all of a sudden, things get a lot more interesting. You know, it was really funny when I hit Legendary, because I think 3 games into Legendary, I'd seen maybe just a handful of thieves my entire way through the season, just a handful. And it was only about 3, maybe 4 games after I got Legendary, I very quickly realized people were more relaxed. People didn't care so much. People don't care about going for the prestige, because the prestige leaderboard still only shows 5 names on it, so who gives a damn about that? And people are more willing to play what they find fun instead of just what they deem to be overpowered. And very quickly, I went from a situation where I'd have, 6 Necromancers plus 2 Mesmers plus maybe 2 other classes or 2 other builds, and that's it, to having a game where the entire enemy team was 5 thieves. And you know what happened in that game where the entire enemy team at Legendary, every single player was in the Legendary division when this happened. Do you know what happened in the game where there were 5 thieves against me? They lost. They got 500 to 0'd. They lost hard. But I think people had fun, and people weren't so sad about losing that 500 to 0 because, they'd already hit Legendary. And I felt things open up. Warrior has been notoriously weak this season. It was weak last season as well. I saw a couple early on, but then basically they disappeared. But then when I hit Legendary, it opened up again, and I started seeing the odd Gunflame warrior reappear. I saw the odd condition damage bursty warrior reappear. People seem to suddenly feel more comfortable having fun, and that made it more fun. Now, I wasn't just PvPing after I'd hit the max division because I was doing it for my dailies, but also because the games generally got more interesting. There was more build diversity, and people were more happy to play with interesting tactics. So if you find yourself in this season or in any of the future, if ArenaNet's format stays the same, I would just let you guys know of that yeah, it gets kind of crappy and stressful and annoying late diamond, but then it does seem to open up a little bit more in legendary, and hopefully that's something we will see be improved upon in the future. So next, very briefly, I did just want to talk a bit about the matchmaking itself a little more. I get the occasional message from someone online every now and then where they say, wow, WP, how can you be PvPing this much? I think it really sucks. All I have experienced is loss after loss after loss after loss. I don't feel like I'm that bad of a player, but I've been losing awfully, or I've just been experiencing these ridiculously lopsided games where, you know, one team will barely squeeze their way to 100 points and the other team barely get, you know, the other team will get the comfortable 500 or even higher. And I get the occasional message about this. I do think that there's an idea out there that this happens a lot. I would say in Season 2, this happened to me far less than it happened in Season 1. It's hard for me to identify that. There's a bias in me here because Season 2, I just won so much that obviously when they were big snowball slam out matches, I didn't really care because I tended to be on the winning team, and I appreciate that bias is there. But even trying to account for that bias, I would still say it didn't happen so much in Season 2. I didn't experience many lopsided games at all. It was kind of nice to see the matchmaking component where if somebody wants to play with a really low division friend, that low division friend gets brought up. I did see that in action quite a fair few times in Diamond, in Legendary. Occasionally at the end of the match, you'd realize, oh, they were a 5-man pre-made and they had a single Amber person in there. Speaking of pre-made, and this was never a problem, speaking of pre-mades were rarely a problem. I have the same opinion I had back in Season 1. I've gone up against pre-mades. I've gone up against duo queues, trio queues, quadro queues, entire 5-man pre-mades on multiple occasions, and always, almost, and I'll get to the exception in a second, always I have felt like I could have won it, or I did win it. It seems like the matchmaking is really, you just want to look at the skill level of the players. Yes, these guys have tried to complement each other's builds, and they might even be in voice comms together. But often people aren't, especially in the lower divisions, these people trying to pre-made like that or just running in with their friends, they don't really know how to utilize that very well. And just because they've queued in together, it doesn't mean this is some insane game you will never win. A lot of the time, I've had easy ass wins and then been really surprised at the end to find that it was a pre-made that I was going up against. And I don't really get a sinking feeling in my chest at all anymore when I see, oh, okay, we're about to go up against a guild team. It doesn't give me that sinking feeling. I generally feel kind of the same as I'd feel about any other match. It could go in anyone's favor. But so let's talk about the exception. This is the last thing I really want to talk about for this video, and kind of the biggest downside I felt for Season 2. And really, it's only related to people who are going for the legendary or are going for the achievements. Now, to me, I probably wouldn't be PvPing if that legendary back piece wasn't there at the moment. I don't think I have that much fun that I'd PvP just for the merit of PvP itself. The fact that there's this big shiny at the end, that's what's really exciting me. So I'm trying to go through these 4 tiers of achievements that have been set up. For those of you guys that don't know, basically you go in, you do some ranked games. It asks you to win a lot of games. It asks you to win games on certain classes. And then eventually you complete the meta achievement, and unlocking that meta achievement allows you to go and complete the next meta achievement. And there are 4 of these that you've got to work your way through. And once you've worked your way through all 4 of them, you get the back piece. Now, for each rung of those 4, you have to do a daily. And the daily, it's like 3 games a day for 15 days. So you do 15 days for the first meta, 15 days for the second, 15 days for the third, 15 days for the last. I am now on the last. But here's the thing. This encourages you to multi-class. So once again, I found myself play the whole way through on just this Mesmer and a little bit of Necro in there as well. And then I realized, okay, I'm going to have to start multi-classing again if I actually want to go for this legendary, if I want to push myself into the 4th tier of the meta. So I had to pick a new class. I went with Revenant. Revenant, I knew I had been pretty strong the whole way through. Revenant seemed to be in a good place, in my opinion. I picked out a meta build, something that I knew people were saying was good, but I had no idea, and I still have no idea really how to run it. The second I did this, the second I started trying to play these games on this damn Rev, I started losing. And not just losing, but losing hard. These 500 to 20 point wins or whatever, these started hitting me a lot. And all of a sudden, I realized that I'm dragging these teams down badly. And it is the most frustrating experience I've had the entire season. You have to understand, I'm not really there for anything else except to get this legendary. And now I've put quite a toxic load on myself and my teammates. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm not having any fun because I'm getting slaughtered. Suddenly I realize I don't really know how to play my build very well. There are certain skills I realize I'm not even using on my bar. Like, I don't know the most appropriate situation. I'm realizing that the players are actually a lot better that I'm against are actually a lot better than I was giving them credit for while I was still back running around on this cheesy Mesmer build. And all of a sudden, I'm losing. I'm hating these experiences I'm having myself, and everyone else in my team is losing too. I don't just feel bad because, oh my god, I just lost this for us. I feel bad because I lost it for the 4 other guys too in a whitewash. And then when you get a pre-made, then when you start seeing that the odds are stacked even less in your favor, then you start to feel really bad. The absolute lowest point I had was trying to just learn another class, something that we should be taking joy in, right? Was just to play another class. And I didn't even get a single point the entire game. I wanted my 3 games for the daily, didn't get a single point, and I don't mean like a capture node, I mean my personal score was at 0, and because of this, I didn't even get any credit for the game at all. So it was, you know, like 5 to 10 minutes completely wasted where I just dragged these other people down. And so the answer to this, a lot of you guys are going to be sitting there and you're thinking it, and you're right, the answer to this should be obvious. WP, don't go into legend. Don't play ranked. Learn the build in unranked first. Learn the build in hot joins first. But I find a real confliction there within me, and I think a lot of players will as well. I think the responsible thing to do, the nice thing to do is, yeah, actually learn it a bit better elsewhere. But the second you go to unranked, suddenly, especially hot join, I would say straight away is incredibly foolish. Whenever you start winning in a hot join, people just do the team swap thing and it swaps around and you never actually find a real game at all. I really feel like hot join isn't much of an option. But when you get to unranked, it can feel like a complete crapshoot. You know, the quality of the players, the builds that you're up against, as well as the way you're running yourself, suddenly has a lot less value. I do think it's worthwhile learning there, but now you've stalled yourself completely. It's kind of this point that ArenaNet is saying, all right, now if you want to make more progress, you have to play another class. But to play another class, you can try and just keep going in ranked, and you can drag everyone down, but you might get lucky and you'll keep getting progress towards your legendary. Or you can delay yourself for ages and ages and ages, go right back to point A, and that feels really unrewarding, to go way back and to delay yourself for ages just so that you can feel a little bit better with your build, then go back into ranked and find, oh no, I still absolutely suck with it, and go back to unranked for ages. It's just this really negative spiral that the players get caught in, and it's not populating the ranked queues, and it's not doing anyone any favors, and I feel like the system in general is a bit broken. I understand why ArenaNet want to incentivize people to play other classes, but it very much feels like, unless you're trying to learn another class right at the start of the season, it's just no fun. You definitely don't feel any encouragement to do it when you're in, you know, Ruby or Diamond, because you've got so much to lose. These losing sprees are suddenly going to start costing you progress towards your next division. And even when you get to Legendary, you're just going to inflict these horrible losses on everyone around you and yourself that makes the whole thing feel a bit naff. Definitely, you cannot just pick a build from Meta Battle and roll your face across the keyboard because the build is that strong. You have to know how to play it, and being unskilled in there has a huge consequence. So that's the only like rockiness. I'm curious what you guys will have to say. I think a lot of you will just say, no, the answer's obvious. You don't ranked. You just do unranked and you do it for ages. It feels like a shame to me that so many players aren't going to want to take that step. They're not going to want to because they want to be there for the ranked. They want to be there to keep pushing the metas, and they're getting none of that when they go in unranked. There's always that temptation to just stay in there, just as I've experienced myself. So there you go. That's pretty much how I felt about Season 2. I'm looking forward, last little thing, I'm looking forward to the next season, because I do feel like there's a very significant difference between Season 1 and Season 2, definitely. And so I'm hoping there'll be another significant difference with the next balance patch we get on the spring update, and then the next season comes out. Curious what ArenaNet will do, what the biggest problems are. I'd love to hear your opinions as well, guys. The last time we did a video like this, talking about Season 1, it was really interesting seeing what everyone's stories were, so I'd love to read more of those. Don't forget to check out everyone else's in the comments as well, guys. But until tomorrow, hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Oh, you do it.
I'm getting smaller. Please keep getting smaller.
I'm looking away. You turn it around. I'm not playing right now. You do it. This is your turn. What happened?
No, I don't want to play anymore.
What happened? What happened? I'm looking again. What happened?